Forgot my bottle opener.
Oh,
Sorry, did I shock you?
you sure did.
Mm. For those who aren't aware, that delightful specimen is Anita. She came into the public light about 5 years ago when she swindled her fans out of over $150,000 worth of Kickstarter donations. She promised just 12 short videos with her ranting about how women are oppressed by video games. Which, by the way, isn't that the most insulting conceivable view of women? They're so weak and helpless that they can be oppressed by a 2D sprite of a woman with bigger boobs than they have? Anyway, despite her hilariously bloated budget for such a trivial project, she only managed 3 of those videos after the last 5 years. And despite apparently finding it ludicrously difficult to produce a 25-minute bitch fest, she's now announcing another project on top of her current one for which she wants $200,000. The video we're responding to today is the outline of what she hopes to achieve with these videos. Now, hopes to achieve isn't quite right, doesn't sound right for this. This is what she's plotting.
For years, Feminist Frequency has created videos.
Have you? Because I don't think spending a few days a year doing something qualifies as been doing it for years. I mean, it might technically be true, but it's mighty misleading.
That examine what too often goes unexamined, the way women are portrayed in media.
No, Anita. How women are represented in media might just be the most over-examined topic in all of history. There are college courses you can take at the most prestigious universities in the world where you do nothing but analyze how women are portrayed in media. And I might add, with the same bias that you do it with, in that women must come out as victims at the end of it. I think this cow might have been milked dry. Maybe we should focus on something else for a while.
And how that both reflects and shapes our ideas about women in real life.
That's a good point to raise. Like, how women in video games are often treated as damsels in distress may reflect or shape the way we think of them as this monolithic victim class, and justify things like affirmative action, or even feminism in general. What are you going to say now? That an ad hoc analysis of some video games might not necessarily be able to be extended to such a broad statement about society?
Doing this work, I've often heard people say it's unrealistic or historically inaccurate to have female characters in media that are more than just passive sidekicks or eye candy. But history itself tells a very different story.
And does it? Because your last series, or what you actually made of it, relied on a conception of women so weak and fragile that they can be oppressed by video games. Video games they are playing voluntarily, I might add. Now you're saying that even in times when women were actually held back from doing the things that they cared about, that they could overcome these obstacles nonetheless. Don't you think this new series might somewhat undermine your old one? If you're saying that you're going to demonstrate that women are perfectly capable of getting on with their lives even in the face of real adversity, much less a piece of media that they don't like.
Although you may not have heard of them, the past was full of women who were rebels, anarchists, undercover reporters, technological geniuses, and even fearsome pirates.
By all means, go ahead. Destroy the notion that it was ever a good idea to treat women as some homogenous victim class. I'm sure all of the anti-feminists will thank you for doing the legwork for us.
So this Women's History Month...
That's a thing? Oh, I'm not going to look that up. I've got enough vomit-worthy material right here with Anita.
We're embarking on a new project to set the record straight.
This is going to be so anti-feminist, and she doesn't even realize it.
A video series devoted to women throughout history who defied the stereotypes and lived remarkable lives.
Why is she so okay with this clear contradiction that she's creating in her worldview?
Although each of them is extraordinary, they can help us reimagine the world as a place where women doing revolutionary things isn't incredible at all. It's just normal.
Oh, that's why. Because when it comes to contradictory things in her worldview, she simply doesn't give a fuck. Sure, Anita. Revolutionary things can be normal. What the fuck ever.
That's why we call them ordinary women daring to defy history.
Are they ordinary or not? It kind of has to be both yes and no at the same time, doesn't it? If they're ordinary, then ordinary women can overcome adversity without the need for some religious ideology. And if they're revolutionary, i.e. not ordinary, then this series you're planning doesn't say a lot about women as a whole now, does it? You just don't care, do you? The answer just has to be that we have to give women something. No matter how contradictory you need to be in order to get to that point. Ordinary women are capable, and so we should respect them. Ordinary women are so weak and fragile they're oppressed by media like video games or words, so we should protect them. Fuck consistency. Just say whatever justifies special treatment.
Well, you may not have learned about them in history books.
Because you avoided the actually famous and influential women so that you could say that the patriarchy kept these women's names from us.
We hope that by the time Women's History Month rolls around again next year, you'll know each and every one of them by name.
And I hope so too. That way we will have 5 more examples to throw at a feminist who tells us the women are so weak that they need to be protected from words, magazines, or video games.
Jingxi started out working in a brothel and ended up as the feared commander of one of the largest pirate fleets in history.
So quite the role model then. Okay, let's go with it. So, this woman was commanding a massive fleet of pirates. But I thought before feminism came along, to save the poor women, that nobody listened to them or even took them seriously. And yet she had the respect of one of the largest bands of pirates in history. I knew you were going to inadvertently crush the feminist narrative with this video series. I just didn't know you were going to do it so efficiently.
Ida B. Wells was born a slave but became a daring investigative reporter who exposed the horrors of lynching after the Civil War.
So black and a woman. And she not only got respect from her newspaper enough and from the people who read her enough to expose the violence that was happening to exclusively black people, but she knew that that violence would shock and appall the readers so much that they would want to do something about it. There goes the intersectional feminist narrative of this racist, sexist society that didn't give a shit about women or blacks.
Murasaki Shikibu lived at a time when women's names were rarely even written down, but it didn't stop her from writing the first modern novel.
Oops, and there goes the read less white men narrative. Keep going, Anita. You've almost completely destroyed the idea that women are so weak that they need to be coddled.
Emma Goldman's radical ideas about gender and individual freedom got her kicked out of at least 3 countries and labeled one of the most dangerous women in America.
Well, you did need to throw in a woman's rights advocate at some point, didn't you? But did you notice how she said individual freedom? That's strange because...
Unfortunately, many contemporary discourses in and around feminism tend to emphasize a form of hyper-individualism. This attitude is often referred to as choice feminism. Choice feminism posits that each individual woman determines what is empowering for herself, which might sound good on the surface, but this concept risks obscuring the bigger picture by focusing on individual women with a very narrow individual notion of empowerment. It erases the reality that some choices that women make have an enormous negative impact on other women's lives. So it's not enough to feel personally empowered or be personally successful within the oppressive framework of the current system.
Because that, yeah. That was cut up a little bit for brevity and also to avoid a copyright strike. Link in the description if you want to make sure my edits were fair. Moving on.
And Ada Lovelace's doctor said her feminine mind was too weak and fragile to handle advanced math. She ignored him and wrote the world's first computer program.
What?
She ignored him.
One more time.
She ignored him.
So when someone, even an authority figure, says something stupid and sexist, you can just ignore them and get on with it? Then why did you get Tim Hunt fired, feminists? Context for those who need it. Nobel Prize winner Tim Hunt makes a sexist joke. Feminists rally against him and get him fired from his job because apparently he's pushing women out of science with a joke. I mean, it's not like aspiring female scientists could have simply
Ignored him. Each episode will focus on one of these women.
No, they won't. You're never making all of these.
And feature gorgeous original animation with a style inspired by both the person and the time period when she lived.
No, not gonna happen. Look, Anita, even if I accepted that you'd follow through on your promises here, which history shows that you won't, it now looks like your fan base has learned something from your performance on the previous project. And this one doesn't seem to be doing so well.
Although their stories take place everywhere from 10th century Japan to the Reconstruction era of the American South, you may be surprised at how relevant many of their struggles are to women today.
So that's your angle. Find a time when there were legitimate rights denied to women based on their gender, and then flatly insist that women today have exactly the same struggles. Even in a time where women have every right that men have, and then some.
We think the stories in Ordinary Women will be entertaining and inspirational to a lot of people, and not just because these women were brilliant.
But also because they're providing anti-feminists and MRAs with ammunition.
Each of them was surrounded by cultural messages that said women had to be small, quiet, and submissive in order to be good. But they spoke up for themselves.
People can just ignore these vague cultural messages? And just do what they want to do, irrespective of their gender? Oh, and if you're going to tell me that, oh, most women couldn't, these women were exceptional, well then what happened to them being ordinary women?
Often at the cost of harassment, slander, racism, and even death threats.
I have had death threats. Am I a hero? No, well, I guess mine were just random comments on the internet, and they don't really count, do they? Anyone watching who doesn't really know about Anita Sarkeesian, just trust me, that was an epic burn.
In a world that was designed to silence and diminish them, they had to be more than just talented. They had to be defiant.
Oh, easy there. That's sounding like some nasty hyper-individualism you've got going there.
We've already invested $20,000 and a lot of effort from our team to lay the groundwork for the first season of Ordinary Women, but we need your help to make this series a reality.
Of course you do. You're such an unabashed con artist, Anita.
One of the most rewarding things about my work with Feminist Frequency has been
The money! It's the money, isn't it?
watching an incredible community of supporters spring up to show how much they care.
How did they show they care, Anita? Was it them?
And help us bring these stories to life in a way that celebrates not just the potential of women, but the incredible things we've already accomplished despite the barriers trying to hold us back.
Stop it. You always talk about how subtle messages in the media can discourage girls from going into whatever career they want. Well, if that's true, don't you think that lying to them about an invisible, mysterious force called the patriarchy, designed to stop them at every turn, might be about the worst thing you can do?
These women's stories have moved us, inspired us, and resonated with our own lives in ways that we never expected, and we can't wait to share them with you.
And yet somehow you will wait, won't you? About 5 fucking years of History's Any Guide. No, I'm just kidding. It probably won't get funded anyway. Anyway, even if it doesn't, I want everyone out there to remember those examples that she gave us here. Because that way, next time a feminist tells you that saying the wrong words is somehow oppressing women, you can say, sorry if this sounds a little hyper-individualistic, but I think people are individuals capable of making their own decisions for themselves, and that they are not all slave to vague cultural messages. And if you're not sure about that, I've got 5 examples for you. You'll love them. They're from a Feminist Frequency video.